What do you think about comedian Dick Gregory's story about Malcolm X's assassination? Can I speak about that? The story that I heard Dick Gregory tell about Malcolm X's assassination didn't make much sense to me. So Dick Gregory alleges that he saw an autopsy report of Malcolm X. I have not seen an autopsy report of Malcolm X. He says that this information is readily available. I have not tried to ascertain this information. I imagine a simple Freedom of Information Act request could probably give someone access to that information, but I don't have it. His story alleges that the bullets entered Malcolm's body in a downward trajectory, and therefore, since the shooters that everyone testified to seeing were shooting from below Malcolm, that the bullets should have had an upward trajectory into the body of Malcolm. So his argument is that the alleged shooters that everyone witnessed, claims to have witnessed on the floor of the Audubon ballroom, that they were shooting blanks. They actually did not have any ammunition, and that the actual shots came from an upward position from unknown assailants. And he says the justification for this was because the U.S. government did not trust black people to get the job done. And so therefore they sent the black people in there with blanks in their weapons while the real shooters hid up above. There are testimonies from people who were there that describe things going on that they couldn't explain or didn't understand, such as flashing lights from up above, uh, activity from unknown persons behind the stage, so on and so forth. And so I can't say that what Dick Gregory's saying is not possible, and I don't have any evidence to prove that that's not the case, but I don't have any reason to believe that that is the case. When I worked for the U.S. government in the military, redundancy was always preferred. It was always preferred to have more than one vital piece of equipment, more than one plan of action, more than one. Redundancy was always preferred for for a mission, to accomplish a mission, right? That way the mission is never in jeopardy, because if for some reason something should happen to one vital piece of equipment, well, we have something that can replace it, so we can continue on with the mission while we attend to that vital piece of equipment that has been uh, disabled for whatever reason. So I would sooner believe that if there was an unknown assailants in the Audubon ballroom, I would sooner believe that the guys on the floor were still armed. Like, it makes no sense for them to send them in there with blanks, especially if if it is the government, because it's in the government's interest to put as much distance between them and the actual assassination as possible. So if I could send a bunch of non-government affiliated entities in there and let them do the dirty work, even if I had another guy there to make sure the job got done, I'm still going to let the other guys do the dirty work. So I might do it in conjunction with them, or I might do it as a backup to them, but I'm definitely going to let them do it. Now, I'm not saying that's, maybe the government wasn't that sophisticated back then, although you don't come to rule the world without a degree of sophistication in your operations. So I wouldn't say that, but if that somebody wants to make that argument, I'm sure there are examples of the government dropping the ball on very simple operations, and you could make that argument. That's just not the argument I would make. So what do I think about Dick Gregory's story? It really baffled me because I had never heard it before, and I had never, I don't know. I guess there's the image that I've always have of Dick Gregory and what he stands for and what he represents. And then there's the bewilderment that I'm left with when I hear some of the things that he says. It's like, what are you saying? Why are you even saying this? And so I don't believe Dick Gregory's version of events to be accurate. I don't know. I can't think of any reason why he would be motivated to fabricate these details. But yeah, I'm just at a loss. I just don't know with Dick Gregory. May he rest in peace. Who is exactly responsible for the murder of Malcolm X? I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around. Who is exactly responsible for the murder of Malcolm X? Well, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the U.S. government played a part in the assassination of Malcolm X. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Nation of Islam, or members of the Nation of Islam, played a part in the assassination of Malcolm X. But who is responsible? Like, who gave the kill order? I would have to say the green light ultimately came from the U.S. government. Both the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X were under heavy surveillance. So, and the Nation of Islam, specifically Elijah Muhammad, had previous encounters with law enforcement. He had, long before Malcolm, he, as a member of the Nation of Islam, and other members of his family, I believe, had encounters with law enforcement. So they knew that law enforcement was a force to be reckoned with. Similarly, prior to Elijah Muhammad, Master Fard Muhammad, as he's called, he's not my master. Master Fard Muhammad had run-ins with the law enforcement, so he also knew that law enforcement was a force to be reckoned with. So knowing that this force to be reckoned with has infiltrated your organization and has no intention of not infiltrating your organization, you could, by virtue of your organization existing, you can conclude that it has been infiltrated just because of the nature of your organization. Whether you know who the infiltrators are or not, you would be a fool to not believe that you've been infiltrated. So even if he wanted to have something done to Malcolm, he would have to worry about a response from law enforcement. And I don't believe that Elijah Muhammad or any of his followers would have acted against Malcolm without some type of protection from law enforcement, not in any official capacity. Now, maybe some more zealous members would, but the zealous members would not have, because Elijah Muhammad's public decree was that no one is supposed to touch Malcolm. No one touches Malcolm. And so if you're just a rank and file member of the Nation of Islam, your marching orders are not to touch Malcolm. You can hate him all you want, just don't touch him. But behind closed doors, when an executive meets with his department heads, things can change. Just look at any organization that exists. The things they say behind closed doors to their executives are not the same things they say in the public eye where everyone can view and hear it. And so the Nation of Islam, that declaration by Elijah Muhammad that no one is to put their hands on Malcolm, can only be applied to the rank and file members. I would be a fool to think it applied to every single person in the Nation of Islam. Every single person in the Nation of Islam didn't have closed door meetings with Elijah Muhammad. So we know the government I believe the government had to know if the Nation of Islam was attempting to take the life of Malcolm X. I think Elijah Muhammad would know, that the government would know, if he had given such orders. And I think that Elijah Muhammad would not have given such an order if he did not have protection from the government in some way, shape, or form. In addition to that, Malcolm X said that the Nation of Islam is trying to kill him. He said this on multiple occasions. And so, him saying that, I remember one such press conference I believe he gave where he made a statement, something to the effect of, it's a shame that two black organizations have to, maybe he said, go to war or kill each other off. I'm paraphrasing. But him saying that would have made him a prime suspect if something had happened to Elijah Muhammad shortly thereafter, right? If shortly after Malcolm making that statement, Elijah Muhammad would have ended up assassinated, the first thing that the local law enforcement, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, any detective agencies assigned to the case, the first thing they would do is account for the whereabouts of Malcolm X and anybody affiliated with Malcolm X at the time of the assassination. Because that just makes sense, especially given you just made this public declaration of war. So why would we not apply that same logic to Elijah Muhammad? A war involves two parties going at each other. Multiple attempts have been made on Malcolm's life up to this point by the Nation of Islam. Why would I not believe that the Nation of Islam was not directly responsible for the death of Malcolm X, especially when he told us that the Nation of Islam was trying to kill him? So I can't prove it. I don't know it for a fact, but in my mind, the Nation of Islam and the American government killed Malcolm X. The Nation of Islam killed him. The American government let it happen. They may have even instigated it to get it to happen. And they may have even participated in the assassination itself. So that's who's exactly responsible for the death of Malcolm X. Do I think Elijah Muhammad gave the order? Malcolm told us, I definitely think Elijah Muhammad gave the order. I think that Elijah Muhammad gave the order because Malcolm told us that that type of order can only be given by Elijah Muhammad. That there's nobody in the Nation of Islam who would dare do such a thing without the blessings of Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm told us that. Who would know the operations of the Nation of Islam better than Malcolm? I mean, just imagine the Nation of Islam at this time was Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and everybody else. Everybody else was exactly that. Everybody else. The only two people that mattered in the Nation of Islam to any significant degree was Elijah and Malcolm. Now imagine I'm one of the everybody else. I know that Elijah and Malcolm have a special relationship. I know they have a relationship that may, in fact, predate me joining the organization. There's no way I'm going to be the one to act on that in that manner based on that relationship without somebody, like one of them is going to have to come up to me and say, do this or do that. Otherwise, that's between y'all and I'm not getting involved. That's Elijah and Malcolm. So in order for me to get involved, you have to invite me into that matter. And I believe the same would have been true for many of your average Nation of Islam members. Now, there were some who, even if I wanted to get involved, you understand, even if I wanted to express myself in regards to the matter, because this thing is Elijah and Malcolm, and they're both bigger than I am, I have to let the giants handle this until the giants come involve me. Now, people who were there before Malcolm, people who were akin to a peer to Malcolm, although Malcolm was the national minister, so he was the only national minister at that time that I know of. I don't believe there were multiple national ministers, so nobody would have been a peer. Everybody would have been a subordinate. But regardless, he had a peer group, right? That they may not have been the national minister, but maybe they were regional ministers or local ministers or some other executive position that gave them a closer relationship to Malcolm than your rank and file member would have. Maybe they would act without the express command of Elijah Muhammad, but I don't think Malcolm said they wouldn't. I don't think they would. I think they would definitely have to have some type of blessing, whether explicit or implicit, or they would have to have some type of blessing from Elijah Muhammad before they would act against Brother Malcolm. What role do you think the white power structure played? How do you think they went about it? Well, the FBI, the U.S. government, NYPD, I mean, law enforcement, the American government in general, because who knows how many hands they use. They were monitoring Malcolm. They were following Malcolm. The day before Malcolm was assassinated, he stayed in a hotel. And in this hotel, he made a statement the next day at the Autobahn that while he was at the hotel, he had received numerous harassing phone calls. And that one of them was from a white person. I always found it interesting that the narrator who communicates this information to us, I want to say, comes from a testimony from Earl Grant. But I always found it interesting that this particular detail, that particular detail is always mentioned, that one of the callers. So I'm getting harassing calls all night but I make a point to specify that one of the callers was white. I think whatever those calls were, whatever was said, whatever their intentions were, I think Malcolm knew that was his last day. I think he knew that whatever they were going to do, they were going to do it that day. And so when I think about the white power structure, we have testimonies about the abnormal behavior of the police officers that day. How normally when Malcolm X was going to be at an event to speak, there would be a high concentration of police officers surrounding the event. However, on this particular day, they weren't there. I mean, we're supposed to believe that's a coincidence. We heard testimony that there were several undercover police agents in the crowd during the assassination, and that none of these undercover police agents made any attempt to defend Malcolm or to capture the assassins after the fact. Are we supposed to believe that's the coincidence? We've heard testimony that there was a company of uniformed police officers in an adjacent room during the assassination who, after the assassination, when they went out into the crowd, they didn't feel the need to draw their guns. Could you imagine a police officer hearing gunshots and not drawing their guns? I mean, this is just, all of these details just add up to say that the white power structure was definitely involved in the assassination of Malcolm X, because there are too many things happening that don't make sense. I could see if it was just one. If it was just, they heard the gunshots and they ran into the room without their guns drawn. Okay, maybe they thought it was fireworks. But I mean, you're hearing people scream. You're a police officer. You know what a gunshot sounds like. You know what multiple gunshots sound like. You're going into a room full of chaos. So you hear gunfire, you see chaos, and you don't draw your gun? Because I've had guns drawn on me just for having my hands in my pocket. So, I just can't imagine that scenario without linking it to some type of complicity. It seems like it would be irresponsible for me to negate the complicity of the United States government in the assassination of Malcolm X, given all of the details that as I laid them out. I would have to be working for them. I would have to be trying to somehow exonerate them of the accusation with no legitimate basis for the exoneration, and I'm definitely not doing that. So the white power structure, Malcolm would be here were it not for them. Malcolm would not have been assassinated were it not for the white power structure playing their part, doing their role, and being complicit as they were. Who had motive to kill Malcolm X? Who had motive to kill Malcolm X? The ironic thing about that is that the white people involved had more of a motive to kill Malcolm X than the people that pulled the trigger. That Elijah Muhammad had a shared motive with the U.S. government, in that the U.S. government used the Nation of Islam as a pacifier for the more belligerent and politically active black people. The whole white people are devils and black people being mad at white people, this was not a new phenomena for America. White people have always held a certain, black people have always held a certain degree of resentment and anger towards white people based on our history here in America. And so this wasn't new with the Nation of Islam, right? The Moorish Science Temple had similar teachings, and we know that Marcus Garvey had similar teachings, more about black pride than white hate, but it was still a doctrine of black people need to know, not allow themselves to be subjugated to white people. And this sentiment was very popular. It spread all over the world. Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association was not limited to the United States of America. I believe at its height it had close to 500 million followers. Somebody could correct me on that number, but this is worldwide. That's a lot of people. That's more people than there are in America. And so the US government has always known that this resentment and this frustration exists within the black community. And it's not a problem so long as the black people who have this don't act on it. It's not a problem as long as you don't act on it. Be as mad as you want, just don't do anything about it. And as long as you're playing by those rules, you're fine. The problem is, the problem is organizations that act on it. And that's what Malcolm became when he was released from the Nation of Islam. He became a person who was creating an organization that had every intention of acting on this shared frustration of black people against white society. And it wasn't just black people against white society here in America. This was happening all over the world. All over the world, resentment towards white subjugation had grown, and people were resisting it and fighting back en masse. Malcolm wanted to be part of that. He wanted his people to be part of that. The Nation of Islam was not interested in participating in that type of power shifting and that type of shift in the power dynamic. So the real danger of Malcolm to the Nation of Islam was the loss of legitimacy that the Nation of Islam would suffer if Malcolm was allowed to continue to speak so freely about what the Nation of Islam was doing and what Elijah Muhammad was doing and so on and so forth. This could destroy the legitimacy of the Nation of Islam. That will result in a loss of membership. I doubt a complete loss, but he may have lost some members. I'm sure he lost some members as soon as Malcolm left. Matter of fact, I know he did. But it would have increased the number of members that he lost, and it would have made it harder for him to continue to recruit. And so with Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, it's really just an economic loss that they're suffering. Now, money is power. And so I can't quantify how much or how little that might have meant to Elijah Muhammad. But I do know, other than that, there was no real threat to Elijah Muhammad from Malcolm X. The bigger threat was to the US government, because Malcolm was creating this other organization where those who had been pacified in the Nation of Islam could now come and become active participants in the struggle, which would undermine the whole purpose of the US government suffering the Nation of Islam. And so Malcolm became a huge threat to the United States government, and the United States government had the bigger motive to want to silence Malcolm. And I believe that they would have employed every tactic at their disposal to make sure that's what happened. Who do you think bombed Malcolm's house? Well, I'm pretty sure it was the Nation of Islam that bombed Malcolm's house. I believe this was a week before. I believe this was a week before Malcolm's assassination when his house was bombed. There are reports about the bombing of Malcolm's house are kind of conflicting because they tried to say that they found a bottle, a Molotov cocktail, sitting on a dresser in his house, undamaged, unbroken, not used. Like they tried to suggest that they were trying to suggest that Malcolm bombed his own house, and the suggestion alone is just it's not. I don't even know how to address it because it's such a ridiculous statement. I don't want to offend anyone who may believe that there's some credibility in Malcolm bombing his own house. A man who's on the verge of losing everything decides to what to what end? Bomb his own house to what end? He wasn't going to get the insurance money, so he wasn't bombing it for that. They said for publicity, but Malcolm had publicity already, so that suggestion just didn't make any sense. No, Malcolm told us who bombed his house. He told us the Nation of Islam bombed his house. Malcolm, whatever accusations Malcolm levied against the Nation of Islam, I accept them because Malcolm was hurt. And Malcolm wanted peace with the Nation of Islam. Even after he was separated from the Nation of Islam, he still loved and revered Elijah Muhammad. And he never wanted to do anything that would hurt the Nation of Islam, that would hurt it as an organization, or that would hurt Elijah Muhammad personally. So because of this, when I hear Malcolm levy an accusation against the Nation of Islam, I tend to accept it, and I haven't heard an accusation that he made that I thought was inconceivable or uncharacteristic of the Nation of Islam. And who would know the Nation of Islam better than Malcolm at that point, other than Elijah, right? So, no. We know who bombed Malcolm's house. The nation bombed Malcolm's house. And a week later, they did what they did. Could this system have given the NOI permission to kill Malcolm? Could this system have given the NOI permission to kill Malcolm? It most certainly did. This system, which is the system is the U.S. government. It's not a nameless entity. The entity is the U.S. government. The U.S. government has numerous departments. Each of these departments have divisions. The U.S. government has offices. I mean, it breaks down into so many separate components, but they're all part and parcel of the U.S. government. So the system definitely gave permission to the NOI to assassinate Malcolm because the NOI and Malcolm were both under surveillance, and neither one of them can make such a move, even conspire of such a thing, without the U.S. government knowing. And Elijah Muhammad knew that the U.S. government knew. Malcolm X knew that the Nation of Islam was infiltrated. So Malcolm X knew that the Nation of Islam was infiltrated. He undoubtedly would have shared that information with Elijah Muhammad, even if you wanted to assume that Elijah Muhammad didn't know prior to Malcolm. He definitely would have known after Malcolm found out, because Malcolm would have shared that information with Elijah Muhammad. So they both knew that the Nation of Islam was infiltrated. I'm sure Malcolm knew that he had been infiltrated, or at the very least that he was under heavy surveillance. And so they both knew that neither one of them could take such extreme measures without, at the very least, the system knowing about it. And if the system knows about it and doesn't act on it, then in part the system is giving you permission. Now, express permission, written permission, the system is going to protect itself. Like co-conspirators protect themselves, right? So they don't leave a paper trail if they don't have to. They don't admit to things that they don't have to admit to. It's no different than a person who walks around with a gun. They don't walk around with the gun in their hand. They hide it. They put it in their waistband. They put it in the swole of their back. They put it under their garments. They put it somewhere such that publicly they can deny that they're carrying a gun. This is elementary. There's no reason why you would understand the logic there, but not understand the logic of systematic approval without express written consent, right? Without it being written, documented, legitimized in some way, shape, or form. Because when you're engaging in criminal activity, the less there is that can be scrutinized, the better. And so, because of the heavy surveillance, because of the fact that neither one of these people, groups, organizations, Malcolm nor Elijah, could make such extreme moves without the authorities knowing, and because the Nation of Islam was allowed to make multiple extreme moves without the authorities engaging, I would definitely say that the authorities gave permission for the Elijah Muhammad to take these actions against Malcolm. If Malcolm escaped death on February 21, 1965, and came back physically fit and his mental capacity was the same as it was before he was assassinated, would you ask him to come back today to challenge those who may be considered our foes today? I know this is an imagined scenario. I am just curious about your thoughts. So we could have Malcolm back today, just like he was the day he was taken from us, essentially. Would I ask him to come back and oppose our foes? Well, I wouldn't have to. He would just do it. That was one of the great things about Malcolm. Malcolm didn't have to embark on this endeavor. He embarked on this endeavor because he was genuine. He actually loved his people and understood the problems afflicting our people and understood that in order to fix that, we had to fix our oppressor. You can't look at an oppressed people and solve their problems if you don't factor in the oppressor. Oppression is an act. It is an act, an overt act. And so therefore there's a force that's always playing on the oppressed. That's what it means to be oppressed by very definition. If there is no external force impeding on your life, imposing itself on you, or in any way playing a role in the conditions that you experience as you experience life, if there is no external force doing that to you, then you are not oppressed. You understand that, right? That in order to be oppressed, there has to be an external force taking actions that are detrimental to you. So that's the nature of oppression. So if I could get Malcolm back today, would I ask him to get back to work? If I had to, but I don't think I would have to. He would just do it, and I would be right there with him. I would be right there with him. I would, boy, I can't imagine how the brothers felt when Malcolm was assassinated. Like, I can't imagine how much it must have devastated those who were true followers of Malcolm and saw this great man, this charismatic, intelligent, eloquent, powerful man who could just move people with his words. He ain't have to do anything. All he had to do was just speak, and when he spoke, it made everything so clear. I couldn't imagine witnessing this man being killed, and especially not if I'm in the vicinity of this man. It would be a tragedy. I don't know if I would be able to endure. So I can't imagine what it was for those brothers. But if he was here today, we would definitely need him to get back on the job and let's get this thing going because we've been stagnant for too long. We've been doing nothing but running around on the hamster wheel for too long, to the point now that we have a significant group of our people who don't even understand what it means to be free. They think free is just fair treatment and equal citizenship. Well, if that makes you free, then what was the point of the American Revolution? This should still be a colony of Britain. All they needed was fair treatment and equal citizenship. That doesn't make you free. It makes the tolerance of you uh, more more tolerable. Like you can endure it, you can deal with it better, but it doesn't make you free. And so we would need Malcolm to reinvigorate that spirit and to put the ball back in motion. He had a plan of action, and we would need him to continue with his plan of action and to proceed past his plan of action to the next steps, which I think would have been the most significant steps taken if we still had Malcolm with us. Many people say we will get another Malcolm. What do you think? We will get another Malcolm. You know, there's so much in that's a statement that it depends on what you mean by another Malcolm, another charismatic, genuine, uh, intelligent leader. Yes, we will. We have. We had brother Khalid Muhammad, who was very, very much like Malcolm in a lot of ways. And we will continue to generate people like Malcolm, like Khalid Muhammad. We will continue to generate these people because the conditions continue to exist and persist. So as long as the conditions continue to exist and persist that require this type of response, then we as a people will always create that type of response. It won't look just like Malcolm. It won't think just like Malcolm, talk or move just like Malcolm, because we're in a different day and age. And the problems that face us are the same, but they've become more sophisticated. And they've taken on new methods of accomplishing their tasks, their goals. And so, to be a leader of an oppressed people, you have to do two things. You have to mitigate the damage that you're receiving from your oppressor. And at the same time, you have to fight to free yourself from your oppression and build your own sovereignty. So these are two different things. And a revolutionary leader who can do both is an amazing person, because one is defending and oftentimes destroying opposing forces, and the other is building the safe haven for the people and building alliances. So these are two very different things. One is a builder, one is a destroyer, and someone who can do both, like Malcolm could. He could destroy the lies of this nation. He could destroy the negative propaganda. He could take on all these opposing forces that were keeping us down and destroy them. At the same time, he could build community with those who were willing to see reason and to understand the truth in what he was saying. So will we get another Malcolm? We most certainly will. We'll get him, and I would say we've had other Malcolms. They just don't all, it's so many things that have to happen for a person to have the impact that Malcolm had. And that may be what we may be missing, because we may have Malcolms out there right now today, but because they don't have the platform, or because they don't have the national attention, or because the country itself is not in a period of civil strife and civil disruption, this quote unquote Malcolm is not getting the attention that Malcolm would have gotten, or is not getting the momentum that Malcolm would have gotten or would have had. So we will get another Malcolm. We have other Malcolms, but there will never be another Malcolm. Malcolm is an icon, and he will always be a singular figure in our history, but he is not the only singular iconic figure in our history, and our history isn't done. So we will produce more singular iconic figures as we ascend to our greatness. Did Malcolm kill himself? Suicide is when someone harms themselves or cause their own death. So what I am asking you is, did Malcolm commit suicide, or did someone else take his life? Well, Malcolm didn't commit suicide, but Malcolm knew that he was marked for death, and he persisted. And so if you're calling this suicide, or you're saying, well, if Malcolm wanted to live, all he had to do was stop being Malcolm, and he would have lived. To Malcolm, that wouldn't have been living. He said that. He said that, even at their young age, his daughters knew that they would rather have a father who stood up in the face of adversity and harshness than one who cowered. And whether his daughters felt that way or not, I can't know. I've never spoken to his daughters, but he believed they felt that way. And that was probably a projection. He probably felt that way, that he could not allow himself to be abused. Like, understanding oppression, like when you understand what's being done to you by another group of people, it becomes hard to not want to do anything back. It's one thing when you don't know, when you don't get it. It's one thing when you don't understand the political definition of minority, or when you don't understand the economic distribution or how systems work. When you don't have an understanding of how all these big picture pieces play and what role you play in them, it's kind of hard to want to take action. because in your life everything is fine and everything is normal and this is just the way it is and you're just going about your day, so on and so forth. But once you begin to understand the game, you understand that, and you understand the game is rigged against you, it's kind of hard to want to do nothing when you know you're playing a game that's rigged against you. And that you're only subjected to this game because someone else says so. And you're held in this position because someone else says so. And it's absolutely hard to not do anything against that. And so, did Malcolm kill himself? No, Malcolm was a man. He was a black man doing what any black man should do with that potential and that opportunity under these circumstances. And he wasn't the only black man engaged in this type of activity. There were numerous black men engaged in revolutionary and counterculture activities, including Malcolm X. So he didn't commit suicide. He was fighting for freedom. And I've never heard anyone else declare a freedom fighter to be suicidal. Oh, he committed suicide. I don't know why such accusations are so easily levied against Malcolm when we don't. It's not even historically how we do this. Like, we never say that. We don't say Nat Turner committed suicide. But we could all agree that there was no other way Nat Turner's story was going to end. There was no other way. That's the only way his story could end. Is that his death at the hands of white people. That's it. That's the only question is, how much change are you going to affect before that day comes? The same is true with Malcolm. There was no way his story was going to end any other way other than his assassination. The only question was, how much work are you going to get done before that day comes, Malcolm? And from what I could tell, Malcolm didn't waste a day. He didn't waste an hour. He didn't waste a minute. Malcolm is known for his punctuality. Malcolm is known for his attentiveness to business and to detail. He is known to thumb his nose up at frolicking and wasting time. So, no, he didn't commit suicide. He was assassinated. And any suggestion to the contrary is just ridiculous. What will you say to Malcolm's critics? Please explain. Elijah himself said before news reporters that Malcolm preached violence and he became a victim of what he preached. Again, what will you say to Malcolm critics? It's Elijah saying Malcolm preached violence. Was probably, so Elijah saying that Malcolm preached violence and that therefore this is why he died violently, because he preached violence, is just more evidence of the bad faith that Elijah Muhammad acted in. Because Malcolm preached what you told him to preach. So let's start there. He was your national minister that you sanctioned to go all around the country spreading the gospel of the Nation of Islam. Whatever he preached, it was with your blessing. So if you say Malcolm preached violence, then it was with your blessing that he preached violence. He learned to preach violence from you. It's funny how they want to give Elijah Muhammad credit for creating Malcolm X, but then they want to act like Malcolm X teachings were an abomination to Elijah Muhammad. Well, which is it? Is he a product of Elijah Muhammad or not? And regardless, if you want to spin the narrative, the propaganda that Malcolm taught violence, you have to understand that the people who love Malcolm love Malcolm. and what he stood for. And that the love that we have for Malcolm will echo in history. It will be passed on from generation to generation to generation. So if you want to start to spread the narrative that Malcolm was violent, and Malcolm was not violent, let me make that statement for the record. But if you want to spin that narrative that he was violent, all you're going to do is increase the likelihood that we become violent like Malcolm. Because that's not going to stop us from loving Malcolm. Like, we know Malcolm died for us. We know Malcolm put in the work for us. We know Malcolm represented us. And we know that he was a strong representative of us. So if you now want to distort and twist the figure or the character of Malcolm, regardless, we're still going to hold him in this high esteem. So you're just going to have us holding a disfigured vision of Malcolm in high esteem, which serves no purpose. And I would hate to do that, but if you want to make that disfigurement the embodiment of violence, then all you're going to do is spread violence through our community. And it'll be violence towards the white devil, because they also like to say Malcolm was a racist, even though they also say he stopped believing in racism. And so the propaganda surrounding Malcolm is all over the place. And the best thing you can do is actually sit down and study Malcolm. If you don't like reading, most of his speeches are available. Well, a large number of his speeches are available in audio format. Just go listen to them. I know for some reason a lot of brothers and sisters don't like reading. I'm not here to try to get you to read. Go listen to them. They're in audio format. Just download them. You can download them on popular apps nowadays. Just download them. And when you're riding around in your car, just listen to Malcolm speak. You listen to talk radio, or at least people used to. You listen to people telling you how they're going to kill you if you come into their neighborhood, or if you look at them the wrong way, or you listen to all this nonsense. Listen to Malcolm for an hour, 2 hours. You won't hear him preaching violence. You won't hear him, none of the propaganda that you hear about him will be able to hold up once you actually listen to Malcolm. So, I may have asked you this before, but I feel it needed to be addressed again. Oh, I'm going to skip that one for now. Is it a far-fetched idea that members in the Nation of Islam murdered Malcolm, or was it strictly the work of the white power structure? Is it a far-fetched idea that that members of the Nation of Islam murdered Malcolm? Or was his assassination just a result of the white power structure? I think it would be a far-fetched idea to exonerate the Nation of Islam of this crime. There's never been a propaganda campaign from the Nation of Islam exonerating themselves in the assassination of Malcolm. Like, you'll hear them say they didn't do it. You may hear this speaker say it. You may hear that speaker say it. But we didn't see the grievance, the grief when we lost him from the Nation of Islam. We didn't see the outrage when we lost him from the Nation of Islam. Regardless of how the Nation of Islam felt about him, they still should have respected him as one of our leaders, right? A choice of the people, and the Nation of Islam will comment on the loss of Gaddafi and explain how it was wrong it was a travesty, it was a crime against humanity, and it was done for nefarious reasons uh, by uh, by villainous minds, villainous personas. And I've seen Farrakhan speak on atrocities of people all around the world who were freedom fighters, not members of the Nation of Islam, not necessarily uh, fans of the Nation of Islam, but because they were freedom fighters, he spoke in their defense. Yet I never see this with Malcolm. The only thing I see from the Nation of Islam in regards to Malcolm is this constant contention and this constant denial, and it's almost admission by omission. It's like it's just their uncharacteristic behavior when it comes to Malcolm, as compared to the political orientation that they suggest that they have, is just telling of itself. If you were politically oriented that way, regardless of the organizational problems you may have had with Malcolm, I would expect you to be outraged at the assassination of Malcolm. Just like I would expect you to be outraged at the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, at the assassination of Dr. King, at the assassination of, like, if the problem, if the, I think that's self-explanatory. Just if that's what you're truly about, then even people who are not of the same religious ideology of you, if they have the same political goals and political agendas and political enemies, then you speak appropriately in regards to their assassination. And I've just never seen that or heard that from the Nation of Islam. Do you think the order to harm Malcolm came from the orders of Elijah Muhammad? I have to think that. I have to think that the order to harm Malcolm came from Elijah Muhammad, because Elijah Muhammad, rather, Malcolm X was such a prominent member in the Nation of Islam that it would have been presumptuous for any Nation of Islam member to kill Malcolm and think they could still be in good standing with the Nation of Islam. Like, regardless of the problems that Malcolm and Elijah was having, that was still a relationship that was special between them two that no one else in the Nation of Islam could claim to have had. Like Farrakhan likes to say, he had a special relationship with Elijah Muhammad, and maybe he did. And if he did, no one else in the Nation of Islam would think that they could have gotten in between the relationship between Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad without one of them injecting them into the relationship. The same should be thought about Malcolm. Malcolm and Elijah had a special relationship. You know, when Malcolm joined the nation, it was 400 people, give or take, somewhere around there. And, you know, after Malcolm became a advocate of the Nation of Islam, membership grew from the hundreds to the thousands to the tens of thousands. And so Elijah and Malcolm began a new age of building this organization called the Nation of Islam. That alone means that those two have a relationship that I, even as a member of the Nation of Islam, I know that there's something between them that I'm not privy to, that I don't get to walk in on. I don't get to turn Elijah against Malcolm or Malcolm against Elijah without understanding that I'm playing on dangerous ground. Now, were there members of the Nation of Islam that would play on that dangerous ground? Yes, definitely. But I don't think even they would have went far as killing Malcolm without at least knowing that Elijah Muhammad wanted Malcolm dead. And so Elijah Muhammad would have had to have some way to communicate this to them and to the people who would act on it without publicly telling everybody, yeah, I want you to go kill him. It's been purported that Elijah Muhammad told his followers to leave Malcolm alone, implying that God or Allah would chastise Malcolm and none of the followers in the organization was to lay a hand on Malcolm. I would hope so. I would hope so. I don't know why people think that people want sworn affidavits from people involved in criminal activity. That's not typically how crime is committed. Criminals don't announce their intentions to the world before they commit their crime. They normally do it in secrecy. And a crime of that magnitude, yeah, it's very smart to distance yourself from the crime before the crime actually takes place. And so I have no doubt that Elijah Muhammad said to his followers, don't put your hands on Malcolm. I also have no doubt that he said other things to other people behind closed doors. And so I can't say that that messaging was consistent. I don't believe that Elijah Muhammad believes that he was a divine messenger of Allah. I don't believe that Elijah Muhammad believed Fard Muhammad was Allah. And so when you tell me that Elijah Muhammad says to his people, don't put your hands on Malcolm, Allah will see to it that he gets what's coming to him, you got to remember this is coming from a guy that doesn't believe in Allah. So what's he actually saying? And why is he putting on this performance? Why is he making this declaration? Well, he's not stupid. He's doing it for a reason. You just have to put the reason, you just have to put the statement in context, and then you understand the reason. It's almost like reverse engineering something. So you know he doesn't believe in Allah, and yet you also know that he's making this statement. Why would a person who doesn't believe in Allah make this type of statement in front of masses of people? Well, a person who doesn't believe in Allah will make this type of statement in front of masses of people to convince those masses of people that he believes in Allah and believes that this is how this is going to play out. Okay, so he made a statement to convince people of something, but we also know that he doesn't believe it, so he didn't think that's how it was going to play out. So even though he's telling his followers this is how this is going to play out, in his mind, it's not going to play out that way. And so it's going to play out another way. And so him coming up saying, oh, nobody's to touch Malcolm, nobody put your hands on him. I mean, that's nice. That's nice. But that's not worthy of taking. I mean, that's not worth considering. Elijah Muhammad's son, Elijah Muhammad Jr., gave an FOI only speech demanding that Malcolm's tongue should be cut out, put in an envelope, and mailed to his father in Chicago. Do you know anything about this, and what can I tell you? No, I've heard this allegation before. I mean, there was no doubt that there was a lot of animosity and hatred towards Malcolm being propagated and promoted within the Nation of Islam, which again makes no sense. That this is the only reason Elijah Muhammad. I mean, just think about that. Why do you're Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam, that is a political organization with a religious foundation. Why do you have to tell your followers not to touch anybody? Right? Who do your followers touch? You shouldn't have to tell them to touch anybody. They're a religious organization. Doesn't your religion tell them not to touch anybody? Doesn't your religion tell them not to do this, not to do that? Because you're not touching our enemies. So if your religion restricts the movement of your followers to not even take any physical action against their enemies, how much more so should it teach you to be tolerant of those that you just have a disagreement with? So, given that, it made no sense that Elijah Muhammad had to make that statement, but it does make sense when you put it in the context of things like Elijah Muhammad Jr. saying, cut his tongue out and mail it to my father. I mean, you ain't gonna cut his tongue out alive. I promise you that. He ain't just gonna sit there and let it happen. And if you manage to impose it on him by force, there's going to be and then what, right? There's going to be a subsequent action on behalf of Malcolm X to try to make you accountable for your actions. So this is why there had to be that type of public statement, because there was this type of messaging internally in the Nation of Islam creating such animosity and hatred to Malcolm. Things like this, cut his tongue off, mail it to my father. Things like his head bouncing down like a set of stairs or something. Things like calling him a traitor and saying traitors should be massacred. I mean, there was tons of animosity and venom going out in regards to Malcolm from the Nation of Islam. So this statement by Elijah Muhammad's son, I don't know much about it. I heard it previously. I heard a report on it previously. I didn't hear the speech itself where he said it. I don't know that he said it, other than that it's been reported to me that he said it. But it doesn't surprise me, because this is in keeping with what type of rhetoric was coming out the Nation of Islam regarding Malcolm at that time anyway. It's just another reason why it's hard to believe that the Nation of Islam was not involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. Have you heard what Dick Gregory said about the assassination of Malcolm? He said that basically the Nation of Islam assassins were given blank cartridges in their weapons to fire at Malcolm. And the actual shooters were white men who fired weapons at Malcolm from a carved out hole from the roof of the Audubon Ballroom. Please talk to me about what you think about Dick Gregory's story. Yeah, so this story by Dick Gregory that Malcolm, the Nation of Islam members who shot Malcolm in the Audubon Ballroom, were firing blanks, and that the actual assassins were in the rooftop of the Audubon Ballroom. Excuse me. We're in the rooftop of the Audubon Ballroom hinges on a autopsy report that Dick Gregory said he has, or he had seen, that I have not seen. And that's, I mean, what can I say? It would be very interesting to understand why there exists an autopsy report that suggests that the bullets entered Malcolm's body from a downward trajectory. Because in the events as they're described, Malcolm is standing on the stage. The traitors run up to the stage. They blast Malcolm, shooting upward. Malcolm's looking down. They're looking up. They blast him. He falls back, and they continue firing. none of those would give you an autopsy report that ended in the bullets entering Malcolm's body from a downward trajectory. You may be able to have made that argument had Malcolm fell forward, and then the subsequent shots after he fell could have appeared to have come from a upward trajectory, maybe, and even that's a stretch. But he didn't fall forward; he fell backward. And so it would be interesting to see the autopsy report that Dick Gregory is basing this narrative off of. It would have been lovely if he'd have just provided it for us so we could all just see it and not have to even consider this alternate version of Malcolm's assassination as he tells it. But for me, until I can see the autopsy report, until I can see proof of assassins in the rooftops, where these assassins go, how they get down from the rooftops, how come nobody else saw them? How come nobody heard gunshots coming from there? Right? Um, I just don't. I just don't find any credibility in the story. I hate to say that because I don't want to take away from Dick Gregory's legacy, but when it comes to Malcolm X, I question a lot of things that I hear Dick Gregory say when I hear him speak about Malcolm X. And I don't know, maybe he has put the evidence out there for us to consume and I just haven't come across it yet. But absent that, it's just hard for me to believe a lot of things that Dick Gregory says when it comes to Malcolm X. What can you tell me about Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace D. Muhammad? So, Wallace D. Muhammad, I don't know much about him. I think he changed his name at some point. But I know he took over the Nation of Islam in 1975 after his father died. And when he took over the Nation of Islam, he turned it into a traditional Orthodox Islam practicing religious organization. And so he took out the political ideology. He took out the racist ideology. He he denounced his father's teachings. He declared that Elijah Muhammad was not a divine messenger of Allah. And he changed the name of the Nation of Islam to something else, I don't remember what. And he began to walk a path of Orthodox Islam. That's pretty much all I know about him. I also believe that there was a press conference that Malcolm gave where he indicated that he had first learned about Elijah Muhammad's extramarital affairs with young women from this particular son, Wallace Wallace Muhammad. I believe this is the son that Malcolm was talking about when he made that statement. I could be wrong about that though. And so that's about all that I know about this particular son of Elijah Muhammad, is that this particular son rejected Elijah Muhammad's teachings. He reformed the Nation of Islam into a traditional Sunni or Orthodox Islam practicing organization. And he did not believe that his father was a divine messenger. He did not believe in the racial politics that his father shared. He did not believe in the form of Islam that his father practiced and propagated among black Americans. Again, for clarity, who do you think or know was at the forefront in Malcolm's murder? Well, I think at the forefront of Malcolm's murder was the Nation of Islam. Of course, the 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 U.S. government stood the most to gain from Malcolm's death, but I don't know if Elijah Muhammad cared in that regard. Elijah Muhammad stood to lose if he couldn't get Malcolm under control, right? If he couldn't get Malcolm under control, then who's to say how many more Malcolms would have come out of the Nation of Islam? Here it is, the establishment has allowed you to become wealthy off of this organization because you stable the stallions, right? You keep these wild horses in check. So if you prove that you can no longer keep these wild horses in check, then there's really no reason for us to allow you to continue to do what you do. That would have been Elijah Muhammad's motivation to, all right, let's just get rid of Malcolm. Getting rid of Malcolm was no big loss to Elijah Muhammad. It was no big loss to the Nation of Islam. It was a loss to us as a people. And so for Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, the victories were trivial. It was just money. That's all it was about, was money and influence and ego. For the U.S. government, this was a world matter. This was a global affair. This was something that Malcolm was having impacts all over the world and was bringing attention to the problems here in America and was forming alliances all over the world. This was a problem for America. So, yeah, America had to get rid of Malcolm, and America used Elijah to do it because there was no reason not to. Elijah was already motivated. Elijah was already invested. And the life of Malcolm didn't mean much to Elijah. And so here you had this storm, and it was unleashed on Malcolm. And they killed Malcolm.
Just a place out here spinning, alone in time and space. Now it's where we live, with one another. In the beginning, God created man. Since that morning, we didn't quite understand about how to live with one another. We talk about love, but it's not enough. We sing about love, but it's not enough, not enough. Lord, you know we need it. Maybe in time we can find a way to grow a little closer day by day by day. Hasn't been quite enough to teach us how to live with one another. In the beginning, we really had the chance to live the good life. I will never understand why it's so hard to give to one another. We talk about love, but it's not enough. We sing about love, but it's not enough, not